What is going on, everybody? What is going on? What is going on? I hope everybody, has obviously, had a good Saturday. The NFL draft has been going on the last few days. You've enjoyed the NFL draft. All your teams, have made their selections. We still have, a few more selections to go. We are in the seventh round. And the Atlanta Falcons are, that they are, done with the NFL draft. The Atlanta Falcons have completed the 2024 NFL draft, all of the picks that they will make this draft cycle. Obviously, we still have undrafted free agency to go, and I'm sure probably as soon as tonight, as soon as, Mr. Irrelevant, that final pick hits, I am absolutely sure that they will already be on the phone with a lot of these undrafted free agents, trying to strike deals, bringing them in for, rookie mini camp opportunities, all that good stuff. But we are here to talk about what I personally thought about the Falcons draft and to give out draft grades for each pick. So I do want to go ahead and say that I, have not been on YouTube since I want to say last Sunday. I was planning on doing a final mock draft, just a full first round mock draft. But I wasn't able to get to it. Some stuff came up Wednesday night. And I was not able to get to it. However, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, follow me on Twitter. That is where I have been the past few nights. Everybody, I think, knows that, has listened to me on Twitter. They know what, how I feel about, this draft class overall. And especially, the obvious that I'm going to get into in a second. However, I do want to first of all say that the thing with any draft class is this. It is very, what I am about to do is, I am about to give out grades based off of how I initially feel about the picks. In 2-3 years, it typically, I think, the kind of unofficial rule about when you're evaluating draft classes, you have to, I think, wait 3 seasons until you can actually evaluate, a draft class fairly. Because by, your third season, that is really when you have a good idea of what a lot of these players have contributed, what they can be, what they have done so far. However, the tricky thing, with this Falcons draft is especially with the pick that obviously defines it, your first round pick. In 3 years, he might just be seeing the field for the first time. So I'm definitely about to get all into it. But first and foremost, man, y'all know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the post notification bells. So that you'll know whenever I push out any new content. And we are getting ready to dive into this draft class. But obviously I'm also going to go ahead and say, I think, there are definitely, I do think there are some positives with this draft. However, I also, definitely think that, there are plenty of things that I don't like. And, I'm also going to get into that. So just do something really quickly. And then we will obviously, not waste any more time. And we are getting ready to get started. Okay, so obviously let's start off, with obviously, and I'm probably going to spend a little bit on this. I have not been on YouTube to, obviously react to the selection of Michael Penix. I was on Twitter, and, anyone who, knows, where I was, the space I was in, with my man Blake Newsome and, all the good people over on Twitter, I freaked the fuck out when this happened. And obviously, unless you have been living under a rock, the pick that really shook this entire draft up was the shocker of the weekend, was the Atlanta Falcons selecting Michael Penix at number 8. After we signed Kirk Cousins in free agency to a 4-year, $180 million deal, guaranteed $100 million of it, we brought Kirk in. It appeared we were in win now mode. We were ready to go out and be in a position to where we wanted to make the playoffs and have a chance to potentially compete to make a deep playoff run. And heading into this process, the consensus by many was that the Atlanta Falcons should pick an edge rusher, should pick, the guy, the position that has eluded them for well over a decade since John Abraham at a consistent level. And that is a star-studded edge rusher. Be that a guy like Dallas Turner from Alabama, or be that a Laiatu Latu from UCLA. The Falcons have to go out and have to get that edge rusher. However, they pulled off the shocker of the night when they went and they selected Michael Penix. And let me go ahead and say this. I am not a fan of this pick. In case you cannot tell, I am not a fan of this pick. I think this is the worst thing that the Falcons could have possibly done. We laid out a lot of scenarios before this draft started, and we laid them out really, based on what the team, currently needs, who could be the best players on the board, because we knew quarterback was going 1, 2, 3. We knew it. And I personally maybe thought quarterback would go 1, 2, 3, 4. It did not happen. We did see Marvin Harrison go to the Cardinals. And then, we kind of, saw stuff that maybe I wasn't personally expecting, but I definitely thought was definitely a possibility. Joe Alt going to the Chargers. Malik Neighbors going to the Giants. The Titans picking an offensive tackle. J.C. Latham out of Alabama. So the Falcons at number 8, they got their pick of, okay, you have your pick of, which, a lot of people were expecting, period. You were going to have the pick of the first defensive player to come off the board. You get your pick. If Latu is your guy, you pick Latu. If Dallas Turner's your guy, you pick Dallas Turner. Heck, considering the spot you're in and the run that has already happened, on quarterbacks and receivers, if you trade down a little bit, it's a possibility both those guys can still be there. And guess what? The first defensive player to go was Latu at 15 to the Indianapolis Colts. This draft started off with 14 straight offensive players, which has never been seen. 6 of the first 12 picks were all quarterbacks. So half of those first 12 picks alone were quarterbacks, and obviously the Falcons were one of them. But when the Falcons got on the clock, we started to see a lot of reports coming out of left field from Adam Schefter, from local people like Zach Klein, that the Falcons, even though they picked Kirk Cousins, could highly consider a quarterback in this spot. And what do you know? We went and we picked Michael Penix. And let me go ahead and say, this is nothing against Michael Penix personally. I cannot be more happy for him that, he got an opportunity of a lifetime. A dream came true for him. Heck, if you even ask Michael Penix, I sure as hell don't think he was expecting to go at number 8. I don't think he was expecting to go this high. I think the only people who knew that Michael Penix to the Falcons were a possibility were the people in that war room on draft night. And I'm going to also be completely honest. I do not think it was the plan the morning of round one, Thursday morning. I do not think that was the plan. From everything I have heard, and I want to, credit some people. I want to credit Josh Bennett, I think his name is. I know his Twitter handle, I want to say, is JMB_CU316. I might have that wrong. I do want to verify that right now. Yeah, JMB_CU16, not 316. I was thinking of Stone Cold Steve Austin. 16. But the dude reported a few days before that, Latu, it seemed like, was going to be the pick. And everything seemed to be pointing like that. And maybe the Falcons trade back, but they should still be in a position, even if they trade back, to get a guy that, to get one of the top defensive guys on the board. However, there was a report, and it was very interesting, that Josh Bennett tweeted out, and I want to give him credit for this. He tweeted out, quote, "First 7 played out as we expected. Blank overrode Terry 3 minutes before we were on the clock." And to be honest, I have a lot of reason to believe that, because I truly, honestly feel like when you look at how the rest of this draft played out, I truly think that Terry Fontenot's plan was to go and pick Latu at number 8. They said that they had listened to trade offers. None of them really intrigued him, so that they were going to just stay at 8, and pick Latu. And, maybe, and listen, this is what I'm saying. I think best play, first of all, you got to throw best player available out the window now, period. It has to. You reach on Michael Penix like that, you got to throw it out the window. Because Michael Penix was clearly far from the best player available on the board. And that was the case with a lot of these picks, but especially that first round pick. Michael Penix, you cannot tell me in any scenario, was the best player on the board. Even if the Falcons had him as QB2, which was one report that obviously that had Caleb Williams number 1, they had Penix QB2. There's no way he was the number 1 player on their board. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe he was. And if he was, to be completely honest, I don't know what they're smoking up in Flowery Branch. I really don't know what's in those bushes in Flowery Branch. But all I'm gonna say is I refuse to believe Michael Penix was even close to being the best player available on that board. I believe this was no doubt an Arthur Blank pick. He's not only did he sign off on it, I think he encouraged it. And this is what he really wanted. And he got it ultimately. Listen, regardless. And Terry Fontenot, I don't think he's squeaky clean in all of this. I think he has to take some guilt too, because he did not stick to his guns. But at the same time, when you look at it, in any scenario almost, if the big ball steps in, you can't say no to him. So Arthur Blank basically, I think, forced their hand into taking Michael Penix. I think they really like Penix. I think they would have, if they could have had another opportunity, maybe to trade back into the first to get Penix, I could see it. Heck, if he was there in the second, I could have seen them taking him. But I really do think they wanted Latu at 8. The thing is, though, when the owner, when the boss, when the man who cuts the check steps in, you ain't winning that argument. And that's how this pick came to be. So taking a look at Michael Penix. Michael Penix obviously has had an amazing last 2 seasons at Washington. He led Washington all the way to the national championship last year. They had an amazing offense with Michael Penix and, amazing wide receivers. Rome Odunze, obviously, he went, right after Michael Penix to the Bears. He fell a first-round pick. Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. Michael Penix, he had weapons around him, but he made it work. Michael Penix is getting rid of the football. He's going to get rid of the football. If he sees an opening, it's gone. It's just like that. That's really a lot like Kirk Cousins. It is. So there are, similarities between Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. However, Michael Penix has torn, I want to say he has torn both of his ACLs. You've had 2 ACL tears. He has had a shoulder surgery. And you got to keep in mind, the guy is 24 years old. The plan, if it goes right, if Kirk Cousins is here 3 years, Michael Penix will not be seeing the field until he's 27. So think about that for a second. You just signed a guy for $180 million to come in and be your answer at quarterback. And no, we know it's not for long term, but still, you're in win now mode. You're tired of waiting. You're not waiting for it anymore. You're going and you're taking it. You're spending money. You're doing what you have to do. And then a month later, 6 weeks later, oh, by the way, we're going to draft your replacement. If I was Kirk Cousins, I would be ticked off. And listen, Kirk is the ultimate professional. Kirk is not going to make a scene out of anything. Kirk Cousins was at the stadium Thursday night, and I'm glad I did not go there, because if I did, might have been leaving in handcuffs. And I did not feel like being detained Thursday night, because I was already pissed off as it was. So I looking back on it, I'm very glad I did not go to that draft party at the Benz. But they had a lot of stuff going on. Kirk Cousins was there taking pictures with fans. And then all of a sudden they call Kirk when he's at the stadium when we're on the clock, and they tell him, oh, by the way, we're drafting your replacement. Oh, yeah, you're the quarterback right now. But the guy who's taking over for you, we already know who it is. Now listen, you have to have a succession plan, and I understand that. You could have done that next year. Next year was the year you go and you get that succession plan. And look, we don't know what the charge is going to be for tampering. You hear some people saying it's going to be serious. Personally, I think if Rich McKay is useful for one thing at one time, if for nothing else, because of his friendship with Arthur Blank, I think Rich McKay could get us out of being severely punished for this whole tampering thing. I think, if we do lose a pick, maybe it's like a 5th round pick, maybe a 4th next year. So you could have still been in a position next year to where if you really wanted to, and we don't know what the quarterback class is going to look like next year. We don't. We see some names like Shedeur Sanders, like Quinn Ewers, but we don't know what it's going to look like. But ultimately, you can worry about that next year. Right now, you should have been looking to go and get a guy that can be an impact player now. Not a guy that can make an impact in 3 or 4 years, a guy that we won't even see play for 3 or 4 years. You should have went out and you should have gotten an edge rusher or somebody, anybody. Could have been a corner, could have. And don't even get me started on the fact we didn't take a DB at all this draft. Don't get me started on it. But we could have taken anybody as long as they make an impact right now. Michael Penix is going to be 27 when he sees the field. And look, yeah, he'll be playing in preseason. The Falcons finally might win preseason games. Yeah, he'll be in practice every day, but he's not going to be getting hit on that. Listen, there is a big difference between preseason and regular season. Guys aren't going full force in preseason. They are in the regular season. So you're going to have a 27-year-old Michael Penix for the first time seeing the football field as a full-time starter in the NFL at 27 when he's been sitting for 3 years. I've heard all the stuff about the Green Bay model, and I get it. This is not the Packers. This is not the situation like the Packers. First of all, the Packers had been winning for years, had won a Super Bowl, had their guy in the building in Aaron Rodgers for years. And Jordan Love, when he was drafted, was like 20 or 21. And he was a project. That is the type of quarterback that you sit for a year or two and you let learn. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. You saw how it turned out. It turned out pretty nicely. But Jordan Love was a project. He had to sit for a few years. Penix is the type of guy that you got to put out there sooner rather than later. Or else Michael Penix, I hate saying this, he could be rusty. And then another thing, too, he's not getting hit. So when he does get hit for the first time, he gets hit the wrong way. Those ACLs that have already been replaced, he's not going to be able to run. See, that's the thing. I hear he's got a 4.4 40. He ain't going to be able to use that running ability because those damn ACLs won't allow him to. And yeah, he can let the ball rip. He's got pinpoint accuracy. But one wrong hit to the shoulder. What happens? I do think and it's not really even a good thing when you think about it, but the only thing is that the NFL is basically cracking down on the way you can play defense, which don't even get me started on that. However, I think that might be the one thing, but still, when you're sitting on the bench for 3 years, you get that rusty. Who knows what you're going to look like when you actually step out on the field? So those are just some of the reasons that I very much have a harp with this pick about that. I honestly believe in my lifetime, this is probably the stupidest draft pick I've ever seen from the Falcons. And then listen, the Falcons have made some bad first-round picks. Jack McKinley was a bad first-round pick. You know, there's been first-round picks that have definitely underperformed. Vic Beasley, we had one amazing season out of Vic, but after that, there are many things that, he just lost motivation for the game. Keanu Neal. Keanu Neal, I mean, that's really a what-if scenario because, man, if Keanu Neal could have stayed healthy, he could have really, really have been something, but he wasn't because those injuries caught up to him. However, I think this is the stupidest draft pick the Falcons have ever made. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I think, and not necessarily so much I think, but I definitely hope that in a decade, I'm eating my words. Because I hope Kirk Cousins comes in here for 3 years. He leads us to the playoffs. He, is able to show Michael Penix the ropes, and Michael Penix can come in, whether it's Kirk, whether it's Penix, heck, maybe both of them can. Either one of them can bring a Super Bowl to this city, and we're all eating our words in a decade. However, that is a whole lot to ask for out of this. So as far as the grade, I'm going to give Michael Penix a listen. I practically do want to give this an F. Matter of fact, I almost did. I'm going to give this a D- just because, and this is the only reason, I feel like, if there's any guy that I feel comfortable with Michael Penix learning from, I think Kirk Cousins will be a great example for him. But at the end of the day, I really do not know. I'm gonna give this a D minus. I really honestly want to give this an F, but I'm gonna give it a D minus. I mean, it's one of those picks where you really have to look at the situation and just it's not it. It really was not. It should have not been the pick there. I think it was a stupid pick. It was a stupid decision. I think some of it may have definitely been paranoia from, what happened after Matt Ryan left, where you had Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Taylor Heineke. But, man, listen, this should have not been the pick here. However, I have no choice now but to deal with it. It happened. It's done. It's over with. He appears to be the heir apparent to the quarterback throne, and I am rooting for him. I am rooting for him. However, I think we're going to this is one of those that it's going to be a long time before we can actually reevaluate this pick. Because who knows if he's even going to step out on the field for us? I think that's something you kind of honestly have to think about. Who knows if he's even going to step out on the field for us? But that does wrap it up on. I do want to get to the other picks. With the Atlanta Falcons' second round pick, first of all, all 4 years Terry Fontenot has been general manager, the Atlanta Falcons have moved their second round pick. I want to say in 2021 we traded it with the Broncos. In the past 3 years, we have traded up. I want to say in 2022 we traded up with maybe the Giants. I want to say, Giants or it was somebody we traded up with in 2022 to take Arnold Ebiketie. 2023 we traded up to take Matthew Bergeron, and this year we traded up with the Arizona Cardinals to the 35th pick, and we gave up the 43rd pick we possessed and the third round pick we got as part of the Calvin Ridley trade. And listen, that, to be completely honest, has an effect on this guy's grade alone, because that to me was I was not a fan of giving up that extra pick, because I honestly feel like, and now you do look at the situation you had occurring where there was a run on defensive tackles. I can understand. I still would have not given up the third. So that's really where I stand on that. However, we did trade up to the number 35 pick, and we ended up taking Rook Aurora from Clemson. So we have another Clemson guy here on this defense. Grady Jarrett, who was a 5th-round pick out of Clemson in 2015, and obviously, Grady has turned into the heart and soul of this team. A.J. Terrell is a Clemson boy. He was a 1st-round pick in 2020, has become one of the leaders of the defense also. We got Bradley Penning, too, who punted at Clemson before coming into the NFL. So Clemson is, only about a 2-hour drive from Atlanta. Many people are like, oh, well, why don't you draft Georgia players? We can just draft Clemson players. It's not much further of a drive. I mean, come on. We can draft Clemson players. We did take Rook Aurora. And to me, I really did want Johnny Newton when he was up there, because to me, I feel like this is another pick where I really feel like Rook Aurora, it's going to take him a year to fully come into that form, of having a actual noticeable impact with this defense. I feel like that this is a situation where you could have had a guy like Johnny Newton that could have came in and be an instant game wrecker and make that impact on the defense, but you went and you picked a guy who is a little bit more of a project. Now, listen, there are definitely a lot of attributes I think you have to like about Rucororo. 6'4", he's 290. You do have to also think about it this way. Grady Jarrett is coming off his first major injury, coming off the torn ACL. And I want to say Grady's going to be I want to say Grady's going to be 30 this season, but I'm not completely sure. Yeah, Grady literally, oh crap, he turns 31 tomorrow, actually. So Grady's entering his age 31 season. I guess happy early birthday to the general of the Atlanta Falcons defense, the heart and soul of the Atlanta Falcons, Mr. Grady Jarrett. Hope you have an amazing birthday. Can't wait to see you back out on the field. Didn't know his birthday was tomorrow. But he's turning 31 tomorrow, so he's entering his age 31 season. And Grady, how much longer is he gonna go? He's entering his 10th season. And another guy too, David Onyemata, who the Falcons did sign last year in free agency. He is 31 too. He will be turning 32 this season. So you do have to really start thinking about life after those two and the middle of this defense. And if you really want to look at Rucororo, I really feel like he's going to be playing a lot of 3 tech. I do feel like that is where they want him at. I definitely think, you bump him out to end. And I really feel like that's what it is going to be. We could definitely see him bumped out to end. We could also, maybe see him, play a little bit inside as well. I think there's a lot of versatility with him because, of his size. You can really play him, if you want to put him in the interior, you can. You want to put him, out to be a defensive end. But I really feel like this is more of, a see, where he better fits at, if you like him better inside or you like him outside. But overall, I do think this could be a guy that takes over for a Grady Jarrett as one of, the leaders, the next generation of this defense, considering they went to the same college. And overall, he's definitely more taller than Grady. He does have more size than Grady. He's a little lighter than Grady by like 5 or 10 pounds, but he does have size, man. So overall, I think there's definitely a lot to like with this pick. And maybe Rucororo comes in and he's a 5.5 sack guy this year, even though I really don't see that. I think it's going to be at least a year for him to really come into his own. However, I do think there's potential here. However, this is once again, the Falcons are supposed to be in win now mode. And to me, I feel like if you were, more serious about being in win now mode, you get a guy like Johnny Newton who can make an immediate impact. But I do understand Rucororo. He was, the better fit for this defense. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick a B-. As I really say, if we did not give up the extra 3rd round pick, which kind of bumps me out, this could definitely probably be a B, maybe even a B+. However, the fact we gave up the 3rd round pick and the fact that also it's really going to take this guy at least a year to really learn the ropes, to me, not really a fan of. I don't really dig it because we need guys that can immediately come in on this defense and make an impact. However, I definitely, think there is some stuff to like about Rucororo, but we're just going to really have to wait and see. Next guy we got here, third round pick for the Atlanta Falcons. It was a guy that I definitely, could have seen being, here as a potential option in the third round or maybe even the second round. And that is Braylon Trice, edge rusher out of Washington. And this was one of those names that I said, listen, the relationship with Jimmy Lake, it was the same as Latu. Latu was at Washington, coached by Jimmy Lake when he was the head coach there. Same thing with Braylon Trice. The Jimmy Lake relationship is going to matter considering just a few years ago he was at Washington in the college ranks. And I got to be honest, man, I really feel like we got good value for this pick. This is still, I feel like it could be a certain ceiling to him. To me, it does feel like Braylon Trice. I could see him coming in and making at least more of an impact than Aurora. Maybe Braylon Trice this year, you see maybe be a 5-6 sack guy. And you have to realize this. The Falcons this year, it's going to be a lot like last year. It's going to be a lot of rotation. You're going to see, obviously, Arnold Ebiketie, we see his best as a rotational pass rusher. And he got more of those stats, but still. I think, you definitely want to have a rotation. And you add a Braylon Trice, and you still have Lorenzo Carter here. D'Angelo Malone, I do feel like is a better fit for this defense, so maybe we see him shine a little bit more. So ultimately, this is actually one of those picks that I really like. I got to be honest, man, this might be my favorite pick of the draft just because, man, I think he's going to fit in nicely. I think that, there is potential there. I do not think he is a dominant force, which, I mean, listen, we clearly need, but also you got to consider third round pick. Obviously, man, you can definitely hope for a diamond in the rough. Maybe a guy turns into a dominant force, but he is a third round pick. But I feel like overall we got, pretty good value for him. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick an A. I feel like that this, was a nice job. Obviously they talked to Jimmy Lake, that Jimmy Lake gave a lot of insight about him, knew about him. They, watched his tape. They saw him, grow at Washington, really, be one of those impact guys on that defense. And I really feel like, you have him in that right role in that rotation. I feel like, he can be this year a 5-6 sack guy, and then we will see where he grows from there. Heading into the picks we made today, the 5 picks we made today, starting off with our fourth round pick 109, Brandon Dorless out of Oregon, a guy that, you want to talk about versatility like we talked about with Aurora. Man, this is a guy you can really put anywhere. You can put him at DN, you can put him at D tackle, you can even put him at outside linebacker, which they did at Oregon. I'll probably assume he's more of a D end here in the NFL, considering he is heavy. But still, I think there's many things you can do with him. This is another pick that I definitely think you can definitely consider is a good value pick. Considering, there were definitely some people that, maybe did see him as a late day 2 talent. Maybe he's a third round guy. So maybe you can say a little bit of a steal, not too much, but a little bit of a steal here. However, I still think number one, it's one of those things where obviously I think, he's going to be a nice, one of those rotational guys that we're talking about. And you're talking about, maybe out of him, you get this year, maybe you can hope 2.5, maybe 3.5 sacks. He definitely, he does scream to me almost like, he can be athletic and versatile, especially, with the many different, spots he played in. But also, I really feel like this is a pick we could have picked a corner at. And that is one of the things that bummed me out because a TJ Tampa was still on the board. Cam Hart was still on the board. Chris Abrams-Drain was still on the board. We needed to pick a corner in this draft. And to me, a really, other than Michael, the Michael Penix pick, that was the biggest bummer of this draft, is that we didn't pick a corner. And I really feel like this is a spot we could have drafted a corner at. Obviously, Dorless, I definitely feel like, at this point in time, you have to consider that, obviously he's a fourth round pick. And listen, what you expect out of a fourth round pick and what you expect out of a first and even a second round pick is kind of, it is on a different level, but still, I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a solid B. I do feel like there's upside there. I feel like we got good value, but man, it bums me out because I really feel like this was the spot you should have taken a corner at. I'm gonna go ahead and give this pick a solid B. Once again, as I say, in 2 or 3 years, when we're reevaluating all of this, who knows, where these guys grade out. This could turn out in 2 or 3 years as one of the best Falcons draft classes, since the one in 2016. Or could be it could be even worse than, the grades I'm giving out. Who knows ultimately? The next guy we're going to go to is in the 5th round, pick 143. We selected a linebacker out of Notre Dame, and one of Alpharetta's own, J.D. Bertrand, a linebacker out of Notre Dame who, let's, face it. First of all, always have a soft spot whenever they draft hometown guys, and that is one of the things I'm really going to give Terry Fontenot credit for. He understands you got to get those hometown guys here. You definitely want to go. And no, that should not be what you're just looking for, but that is one of the things you do consider. What is the passion that they might have for this team personally? They probably grew up rooting for this team. J.D. Bertrand, you could definitely tell he was pumped up. He was excited that the Falcons picked him. Raheem Morris. Raheem's always excited. He's always a ball of energy, but Raheem was excited. He's like, man, weren't you just in my office? Get your ass up here to Flowery Branch. Let's just get up here today. Let's get right to work right now. Man, I love that. I love that energy. But also, man, you do have to come back down to earth. I feel like he is going to be a very solid depth piece, and I feel like this is also a pick when you look at a guy that can have an impact on special teams. And they described him as really a 4-down guy because, out on special teams with the kicking unit now, and especially some of the newer kickoff rules, that special teams is a little more key, a little more critical now. So you do have to consider that. And then this does definitely, I feel like it can give more versatility to what you do to and with your linebackers. If you want to, utilize Troy Anderson's athleticism more and, really put him all around, you can. You want to bump Caden Ellis out to outside linebacker or have him come crashing down on blitzes more. You can definitely do that. So overall, I'm going to give this pick a B. Maybe I could have bumped it up to a B plus, but I really feel like it's a B right now just because I don't think we're gonna see a lot from him directly. But I do think he's still going to have an impact, and I also feel like, man, he is going to have an impact on special teams, so it's definitely important. Maybe this is one maybe I could have done a better job looking at because as I really look at it now, maybe he could have been a B plus, but I still think a B is fair for this just because I really honestly feel like, obviously not too outrageous. I did feel like we could have drafted another linebacker. Maybe this could have been another spot we drafted that corner that we did not get today at. But overall, man, satisfied with this pick. It was definitely a fair pick. Next pick we have, pick 186. This was the pick we got from Arizona. We drafted my guy out of Alabama, running back Jace McClellan. And I'm going to go ahead and say I definitely feel like this was a pick that made sense because when you look at it, you have Bijan, you have Tyler Algier, CP left in free agency. You don't know how Avery Williams is going to bounce back from that torn ACL. It was an ACL or Achilles, or well, it was an ACL. That torn ACL. So you need that running back depth, just because obviously running backs, they get worn down easily. They can go down. So you need to have a third and fourth string running back just for that. And also they mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and say, as an Alabama fan, he's really good in pass protection, and he's also, when you need him to take those carries, he was the leading rusher for Bama last year. He can, do the job. He can take on the load. You can find running backs that can have an impact, and be those nice role guys in many of those different spots. So I definitely do believe that that is definitely, he's going to have his different roles. He's also going to be present on special teams also. So overall, man, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick a B+. I feel like there's definitely many different roles for him. Obviously, he's not going to be the leading rusher or anything like that. Obviously we got Bijan, we got Algier. But when you do need him to take a few carries here and there, I feel like he's going to be solid for it. And he's also, going to be able to do good in pass protection and really have that. A lot of these later round picks, I think he really got to notice, they went for guys who could have an impact on special teams. Obviously, that is something that Terry Fontenot also very much values, guys that can be versatile and impact from many different areas. So I think a solid B+ for this pick is pretty fair. Next pick 187. We had back-to-back picks today in the 6th round. We drafted out of Illinois wide receiver Casey Washington. Let me go ahead and say this. I like the Braylon Trice pick. If I could probably say my second favorite pick of this draft, I would probably say it was this. I really dig this pick. And obviously a Falcons wide receiver room that is pretty full. I mean, you have obviously Drake, Darnell Mooney, and then when you consider Kyle Pitts also, he's going to, be getting a lot of targets. He pretty much, you can consider him another wide receiver pretty much. You got Bijan who can get the ball out of that backfield. And then you go into the guys like Rondell Moore and even a Ray and, Daryl Hodge can make the typical splash play here and there. But I really feel like, Casey Washington is that guy that, Zach, we have seen in LA, they developed wide receivers. We saw it with a guy named Puka Nacua. And I'm not saying Casey Washington's going to come in and be Puka Nacua, go for over 1,000 yards. But I do feel like he could be that guy that does develop, into a solid guy at the wide receiver position. Definitely think he's great depth for this year. And maybe he's a guy who maybe, can be a potential future wide receiver 3. Maybe he's a guy that you can put into the slot. I really have seen the comparison of Hunter Renfrow and just looking at him and how he's built. I think that is definitely fair. And I can trust a Zach Robinson with his development. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick an A-. I feel like, being a 6th round pick, I feel like that this is a pick, I feel like A- is also pretty fair for this. The final pick the Falcons had today, they had to satisfy the Georgia fans, and they did it. They picked Zion Logue, a defensive tackle out of Georgia. I want you to think about it. They picked 3 guys identified as defensive tackles alone. They picked 3. They picked 4 guys who are, that'll be rushing the passer, and 5 guys in that front 7. So, but man, I'm gonna keep this short. I feel like this is just another. I don't even know if he's gonna make the roster or not. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I ultimately, man, I just feel like this is really one of those spots. Maybe he's a practice squad guy. But yeah, I mean, this is maybe. I definitely think I would have rather have taken a corner here than this. But to me, man, I'm gonna go ahead. I really don't have much to say about it. I mean, he was on that Georgia defense. I mean, and you got to give Georgia the credit, even if you don't want to. Which is obviously Kirby. And the job that they've done, they know how to mold those defensive players. However, I really don't see Zion Logue having the biggest impact. I could be wrong, but I just don't see him having the biggest impact. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a D+. And overall, for this draft, I'm going to go ahead and give it a C-. As I said, this was not the draft for me. And listen, that Michael Penix pick carries a lot of weight in this C- because you got to think about it. That first round pick, and I said this before the draft, that sets the tone for how the rest of the draft goes. And after they picked Michael Penix, they really had to go and panic to get that edge rusher. They had to go and panic to go, and that's why you saw them, go and pick a Rukaroro. Get, guys that not just that can get to the passer and also make an impact, on the front of that defense. They went and they picked Braylon Trice. They picked Dorless, a guy that can go out and, play for many different positions and try to get to the quarterback. So ultimately, to me, I feel like when you could have definitely taken a corner in this draft, and a lot of those corners are falling. And now you're left post-draft, and obviously we have undrafted free agency. And here's the thing. Free agency never ends. It does not end. It opens, but it does not end. And that is the unique thing about this. So ultimately, when you look at it, yes, it is, frustrating we didn't get a corner. However, an Achilles Witherspoon is still out there. And I would expect the Falcons to sign him. I think they got to sign him. However, I still think, at this point, I definitely think you should have made it a priority to take a corner, but you couldn't for many different reasons. You could not take a corner because you had to go and you had to get that extra edge rush help. And that's why, I feel like that Penix pick had immediately screwed up how we viewed this draft, because we were just like, we got to get as many guys as possible to get that impact to get to the quarterback, without also realizing that we need DBs. And look, we got DB coaches. We got Raheem. We got Jimmy Lake. We got Jerry Gray. But still, there are some guys like Richie Grant who just have to go. That is stench that we got to remove. And yeah, you got a Clark Phillips you can develop, but Clark Phillips also lacks in size. I want a guy with size. And I feel like that is where an Achilles Witherspoon, a guy who, let me check. Let me check Achilles Witherspoon's height. A guy who is 6'2", so who has, solid height as a corner. I feel like that is where you go, and you have to get a guy like that now. But the thing is, man, free agency, it does not end. And now that the draft has ended, obviously we're going to, sign undrafted free agents as we head into rookie mini camp, and we have OTAs that start on May 13th. Mandatory mini camp is June 10th to the 12th. Before you know it, it's going to be training camp. So, yeah. But now that the draft, is coming to a close, we are within the final few picks. And we are at pick 254 right now with the LA Rams. But overall, man, listen, it is another draft cycle that comes to an end. Obviously, man, the mock draft season, the lead up to the draft, it's a very exciting time. However, ultimately, when you look at it, this is now the point of the off season where, we kind of, we really want to get antsy for football. We do have the NFL schedule release here, I believe on May 9th, which personally to me is my favorite part because we get to find out when we're playing who, how many primetime games are we going to have. I'd assume we have at least, 3 primetime games this year. So I will definitely be covering that. That's also when tickets go on sale. I get to, lock in those games I'm going to be at, this year. And, man, it's an exciting season regardless. And obviously the draft, it was really underwhelming. It, died down some of the hype. But, man, don't let it distract you from the fact there is still a lot of hype for this season. However, with that being said, I am going to go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everyone who watches, everyone who comes in on playback. Y'all know the drill, man. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the post notification bell. And with that being said, I will see you all probably. I don't really plan on doing much of anything unless anything major breaks. Probably until the NFL schedule release on May 9th. So I will, until then, see you all in the next one.